Where do you see as the line between this is my idea and because there's a clear wrong of I'm just going to take this PDF and throw it
Right.
in my course, or I'm going to
Right.
take Tim Slade's video and put it in my course. That's wrong. But below that, like where do you see where do you see other lines?
I mean, I certainly think about, like in our space, if we're talking about leadership development, if it's a model, if it's a framework,
Sure.
if it is a
Yes.
language that's used to wrap around the model, it belongs to someone,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, Principle based, as you start moving away from that, kind of getting into principles based, if you were able to do research on a set of five key principles and be able to substantiate that with research and evidence, right? Certainly there's a case there, to be able to use that kind of content. But it is really sticky. I mean, if I'm an instructional, I say just an instructional designer. I am just an instructional designer, right? I am not an expert
Yeah.
in flight. And so for me to write ground school training, I'm getting all of that from somewhere, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
hiring a subject matter expert and doing interviews with subject matter experts to pull my content. That certainly is an option. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
but certainly for credibility and basis, and to stay safe, you know, the typical instructional designer is not a deep learning expert on a lot of the topics that we write about. And so
Yep.
it's whether it's having those internal experts inside, maybe supporting it
Yep.
with some research and citing that research, that
Yep.
supports kind of your subject matter expert's position. I think that that's a safe place to be for sure. Or
Yep.
using organizational content that's happening in the organization, being able to cite things that we are seeing that we know work, citing things that we know don't work. We want to avoid this kind of practice. And so building your learning on what does work based on actually body of evidence that's right here in the organization. Um,
Yep.
I think that certainly rings true as a safe place.
I feel like when as I'm listening to you talk, it's really saying like, be bolder, be more creative, and come up with and have your own stuff. Like it's making me feel really good about really early on in my when I was first getting into instructional design, and I was reading a ton of books about how the brain works and all this stuff, and I came up with this idea of just like, okay, like good, in order to get behavior change, you need specificity, connection, and context. And now that's my model that I talk about all the time: specificity, connection, context. Like I do talks on it, I've written articles on it, and it's just a thing that I made up, and so it's mine.
Right.
But it's for the instructional designers out there, it's about like having that belief in yourself of like, you can do this, like we can all do this, we can do the research, talk to enough people, and like you don't need to use, like you were saying, the model that this other person used. Now sometimes there's a reason to, because it's research backed and it has like, and there's like a particular thing that you're trying to get, but that research costs money and it took time, and so it makes sense that you would find a way to credit them or get their permission, or whatever it is, depending on the situation.
Right. And I'll use a beautiful example from one of my clients at Blanchard. As we're putting together a program, they really wanted to touch on how do we help people to think through their decisioning and identify if their decision is sound as a leader in an organization, right?
Sure.
There's tons of models out there on
Yeah.
decision making.
Yeah.
But their CEO had the simplest model, right? Excuse me, their CFO. How does it impact our customer experience? How does it impact our revenue growth goals? How does it impact our bottom line? How does it impact our people? Like that's how we want you thinking about it and actually giving thought. And it's so simple because again, it is based on the body of work that is happening around you. It is easy to put that kind of a framework together versus going out and pulling and trying to extrapolate or license someone's, financial advantage decision making model,
Yeah.
right? It's a much more common
Yeah.
approach. Like you said, you observed, you saw certain things that were common and inherent that would benefit. And to be able to almost categorize these based on what you've seen, sometimes simplest is best. And
Yeah.
that's what we've got to work with. And it's quickest to deploy, right? And that body of work that we can base our observations on is right in front of us. Interview senior leaders at the organization, interview
Yep.
customers, what's going on, interview subject matter experts, get their perspectives on things,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
A lot of that can
I
live
love it.
inside the organization, lots of it.
Yes. Yeah, I love it.